name is Araceli Esparza. I'm the founder for Midwest Mujeres. And today I have Lindsay Panis with me from Northeastern University. She is located in Western Massachusetts and always has been. I've been working remote for them. She's the experiential partner development coordinator and has been working with Midwest Mujeres. And today, my intention of bringing you, Lindsay, on to and having you meet the women of Midwest Mujeres so that they can learn like all the great things at Northeastern, this particular program university for outreach and development of grassroots organization, entrepreneurship. Can you tell us a little bit about your position at Northeastern? And for folks to know how we even got connected
Sure.
was like through LinkedIn.
It
Uh,
was.
yeah, it was through LinkedIn that you saw kind of the work that I was doing with Midwest. And like, I'm very vulnerable about my story, as people like to say, vulnerable, but I think it's just being really transparent. I want people to know about the journey of being a founder of anything, be it a business, a nonprofit organization in my case. But in doing that, I was able to attract some solutions like the solution of Northeastern University.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for having me. Northeastern University's whole premise for education is experiential learning, and that typically takes place through co-ops and internships. And those are longer term engagements where students step outside of the classroom and gain real world learning experiences that they apply to the overall programs. About 7 or 8 years ago, we identified an accessibility issue that not all students are able to do that for a variety of reasons, whether it's a degree completion student, whether they have an atypical schedule. Not all students can be on the ground in an environment gaining those real world experiences that are so pivotal to the overall development of a professional. So this short-term solution, or actually this solution is short-term virtual projects, which are about 6 to 8 weeks in length and about 40 hours in total duration. So like Araceli mentioned, I reached out to her on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and we began our connection. We work with both for-profit and nonprofit organizations to basically develop these relationships. And our goal is to kind of tap unmet project needs that we can then embed into academic courses. We work with more than 30 programs across the university, so there's no shortage of ways to connect. We work with everything from nonprofit project management to corporate and organizational communication,
Yes.
analytics, marketing. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There's so many different ways that we can integrate.
I've
And
used like
which
already
programs
two.
have you worked? Yeah, which ones have you worked with so far? I can't even remember.
I know I've worked going on to three now. So the first one was IT. And so when she's talking about the analytical data for a founder, and this is for any kind of business, like you're trying to do market research into like how are you collecting your data if this organization, in my case, it's an organization, it could be a business and what have you. So you're thinking about how you're collecting the data and like how you wanted to organize that. It really helped me get down to the core questions that could be utilized later on for grants or what have you. But then also how, like what am I going to have to do when my information gets so big? What are the pros and cons for it? So these were questions that you oftentimes when you're starting off in a business, not a lot of people have the want or the need to want to sit with you and have these conversations, and then for them to have the expertise and knowing how to play out every what if scenario. And it can be a real big cost benefit for you too to be able to be around experts or people in the field. In my case, it was IT analytics of like data, because we're like
Okay.
collecting data. So needed to know about that. And they might have not known what Midwest Mujeres was or that we were a lifestyle organization. Quite the opposite, actually. But still, they understood numbers and obviously that was their expertise. My expertise is bringing it in. And so I thought that was really lovely is that also these are like older adult students too.
It
That's
can
I
be.
not can
It
be.
can be. It depends. So we work with both graduate and undergraduate
Yes.
level students. So sometimes you may have a student who is, a sophomore or junior at the traditional college age, and then you have a lot of people who are either continuing their education as adults, or they
Yes.
are completing degrees or changing career fields. And that's what makes this so accessible is the online nature of these projects.
We were, and in the beginning, we were saying yes, and she's always been remote because this program was remote before the pandemic was, made us all remote. So in that time period, I think too, at least for me as a founder, it felt good to connect with the students to get like a short-term project off the way. That ended up becoming very fundamental in the way we work, and it was encouraging. Uh, Also, tell us about some wins for the folks that are like who go, what is the process to onboard them,
Sure.
all of that. So if some of the women
Sure.
that are interested, who are listening, it might be interested in engaging and like checking it out.
Definitely, definitely. So our project, the first step would be to have an introductory call with me, just to make sure that you're familiar with the format. Although some of the information that's being shared today is similar, I do like to make sure that we're able to level set and make sure everybody's expectations are on the same page. Um, because these are academic learning experiences done in conjunction with real world companies. We like founders to know that the projects are not able to be time sensitive or mission critical. The reason for that is because we match with courses. Sometimes you might be matched in a few weeks or it might be a few months. It really depends on where the talent is available and the most applicable match for the organization's needs as well as the students' learning outcomes. So that's one piece of it. And as far as wins, I mean, we work with a variety of formats of students. So sometimes it's small groups of
Yeah.
3 to 5.
Yes.
Sometimes, which did you work with? Small group?
Yeah, it was the first one was just two. It was two
Okay.
students. No, no, sorry, three students. And then the second time it was like, yeah, it was more of a class. It was definitely like 5 or 6 students. The second one was marketing.
Mhm.
And they went, and so when you're saying like not mission driven projects, I agree. These are projects that are they're mission supporting projects perhaps is
Supportive.
maybe they're
Absolutely. Yes.
supportive, but they can't be already like I don't know how to explain it, but it, you're probably better than I can, Lindsay, and this is why you need to have that one-on-one conversation because the second semester one, for instance, we were going to do a heritage, but they asked such great questions about like, well, who am I speaking to about this? Like, who's your audience? And I'm like, you know what? We haven't had a deep dive audience. Well, I had data though from like first semester. Like we had
Mhm.
already all that data. So it's like, can you help me look through this? And so they helped me do they helped look through this data and then they created a SWOT analysis, a SMART analysis, and also did a customer personification, like what was the journey and a lot of the stuff we're just still into implementing now of their suggestions, very good suggestions. But yeah, they are not critical suggestions in sense that I needed those things in order to keep my business going. I didn't.
Right.
They're there to enhance what I'm doing. So, prove to our funders, prove to our own audience. Like now we know who do we speak to? We want to speak right into the specificity of our audience so that they can identify themselves quickly
Right.
and on board quickly. And so that I think is what we're saying, like as far as like versus critical versus supportive, um, for your mission. But these projects can
Absolutely.
really help you at the
They
at the
can.
long run. Yeah.
And they can be very rigorous. Just we
Yes.
don't want to have information that needs to be prepared for a client or something with a
Great.
very specific end date. You just gave a perfect example though of a project that had multiple phases. And
Yes.
so that happens at times. You may
Yeah.
have an initial plan, and as you're
Yeah.
meeting with our expert faculty and these students, the project may evolve, and that's okay. We're
Yeah.
Organizations are welcome to have more than one project in our database at a time, but other times there might be the first project that leads itself to the second phase of a project. Um,
Mhm.
we do engage with organizations in different ways. So if your organization has more than one employee, you are able to submit and you each want to submit a project, that's okay too. We just
Right.
like to make sure that everybody has bandwidth to support the project. Um, we haven't mentioned yet, so this is a completely free program to the
Oh yes.
organization. I know that's like the best part of all of this.
Yeah.
It is free. We do ask about 1 hour of
Yes.
time in order to just provide a little bit of mentorship to the student group. Um, answer any questions they may have. The one thing we had touched on also is the grouping size. It sounds like your groups are relatively small. There are situations where a whole class might be working on a project. The faculty member may break it into smaller components. Everyone may work together. But in that case, there would be a representative of the group that would be speaking with the founder, just to answer questions, etc.
Okay.
We wouldn't expect anybody to meet with 20 or 30 students if it happened to be a large class. But that's another piece of all this as far as the collaboration. How is your experience mentoring the students?
It's been really good. And I don't feel like it's taken a lot of time. I mean, obviously they need direction for the project that we're working on, and only you have those answers. So they're good about that. And they're also really good about like scheduling that time with you. Uh, I think it's important when you're going into it as somebody like myself that who applied. There is a little bit of an application and summary, and so you really want to make sure you know what your deliverables are going to be. And I think that's where it was nice that I actually had. So I've had the two short-term project ones and then a
Mhm.
long-term semester one. And so it just happened that the long-term semester one was what we really needed for the in-depth personifications of these um of our clients and like yeah, to go through the in mind through all that data. It was just the right amount of time, so kind of thinking about that too, like have something that's like 4 or 5 week project and something that might be like a couple months. It's gonna
Sure.
really depend on that availability. Yeah, I
Right.
would say
And
to
that's
have that.
something, right, right. And that's something when writing the scope, the scoping form is a 2 paragraph document
Yeah,
that is about 200 words total. The reason for that size is because it's intended to be a high level overview, just to share kind of the overview of your project. Once you are matched, that's when you can provide all the other relevant context necessary for
yeah,
project completion. Um, when writing that project scope, you're really aiming towards about a 6 to 8 week project. And then if you have the opportunity to have a full semester course, um, and the faculty member would like a little bit more, that's something that can always discuss once you're connected. Um, Typically, we're aiming for that 6 to 8 week and about 40
yeah,
hours total duration type project.
yeah. These projects can, I think, too, like you were saying, they should be kind of evergreen. Like I know if you're thinking about maybe doing a social media one or anything like that, things that are gonna, are always the information that you need. That's always going to be needed. How about that?
Right.
That's all right. So
Absolutely.
that's
And
kind of like our tips. Yeah.
absolutely. And the great thing about this is these are intended to be creative solutions to your business problems. So
Yeah.
we're projects that are kind of like desk work is not what we're going for. We're really looking for ways that students can stretch themselves, draw upon their background knowledge, their
Yeah.
coursework to really provide you basically a free consulting service. You can choose to
Yeah.
use which pieces of it you'd like. Others you don't have to. There's no commitment beyond the first project. Obviously, we'd love to develop a partnership, and in many cases, we do.
Yes.
But it's really just kind of a great way to those projects in the back of your mind that would love to do, but you don't have the bandwidth.
Yes.
This is the perfect fit for that type of a project.
So you've seen in the last like 2, 3 years that you've been doing this work with Northeastern University, which is staged where? Like where is it housed? Northeastern.
So our main campus is in Boston, but
Okay.
then we have regional campuses throughout the country. We have two in
Okay.
Canada and one in London. So there are quite a few throughout the United States. So it's a cool opportunity for founders to work with campuses either local to them or in another part of the country or world. It really just, and that isn't, again, this is kind of like a toss up. When you enter a project, it goes into our database and then you're matched with whatever course is most applicable to the project's needs.
Yeah.
So you may be I know you're based in the Midwest, but you may be matched with a group in Silicon Valley. Like it really just depends. Or you might be matched with a Boston based group. As far as the meetings, that sounds like it might be challenging, but that's something that you can agree upon.
Oh,
Whether you're doing video meetings, whether you're doing email, phone calls, it's not really a hindrance because everybody's virtual, and you may even have group members from throughout the country or
oh
world.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very cool.
That part I really enjoyed was like, all the international students. And this semester, by chance, we have all Latino students.
Oh, how
So
cool is
most of
that?
them are bilingual. So this is going to be amazing. And they're
Oh,
all
neat.
doing a social media Heritage Month campaign. So when I said evergreen, I'm like, yeah, Heritage Months don't change.
Right.
You know, if anything, they grow. And so we were able to take, so now they have all the pieces. You know, we know who
Mhm.
our audience is, we know what we want to speak to them about, and they have the expertise in both languages. So it's a win-win for
That's
us,
so
for
cool.
Midwest Mujeres. Yes, love, love, love it. See, in the last 2.5 years, you've seen so many businesses come through here. What kind of advice do you have for folks, you know, who are starting, because they're starting a lot of things, right? And so you've seen a lot of starters. What kind of, maybe that's the better advice. What do you have for, what kind of advice do you have for people who are
What do we
starting?
have for, oh my goodness. Um, our vantage point out and sharing kind of like areas that you feel like you can grow in with the students is a really great place to start. You don't have to be an expert to have a project, have the students work on a project. So for example, if you're not real familiar with website development, but you feel like your website needs a refresh, you can still have a project in, development. It really depends. You don't have to have the expertise necessarily in the area that you're asking the project to be completed in. That's the whole point of this. We're bringing in industry experts, students to work on a task that you have put forth. Um, Additionally, no project is too big or too small. So even if a project seems like it's insurmountable, we can always break it into smaller components. And that's kind of the reason that you would meet with me as part of this process. We can break the project into smaller increments so
Yeah.
that students are able to access each component and complete them as you both intend. Um, on the flip side, sometimes we do have room for a smaller project, a more short-term project. Um, there's no limiting factor to these projects as long as they have a clearly defined description and a tangible deliverable at the end. We're able to find ways to integrate projects into all of our different courses. We have projects everywhere from research-based projects to strategy-based projects.
Yeah.
Anything students can begin working on quickly when their matches due is a really great fit.
Absolutely. What are the requirements? So we know this program's free. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I started my business 6 months ago. I just registered my LLC. Am I eligible? I mean, who does this work
Absolutely.
for? Okay.
Absolutely. And we even have had situations where there are individuals who have a business concept,
Okay.
and they're looking for some support with research, some market research.
Okay.
Is this a business that might be feasible in my area? It doesn't have to be a super developed business or concept in order to have
Okay.
support. Um, that's
Thank you
also
for
another
making
option. You're welcome.
recognition, Lindsay, because a lot of the women that we do work with, they're just developing that idea. And that's what I wanted to know.
Sure.
I'm like, for who is this? Who can it really help? I don't want people to go to something that's already so advanced for them, though, either. So it
Exactly.
sounds like you're really about meeting people where they're at.
They are.
Maybe
And
the thing is,
truthfully,
it's about the virtual, right? Because there's a
it
lot,
is.
all
Yep.
this is very virtual. It's not in person, but you're getting paired with experts around the world, who are
Yes.
already in their, graduate master's degree. Yeah.
Right. And we do have some undergraduates as well, but typically there is a little bit more faculty oversight with undergraduate groups than there is with graduate level groups. Again, it's a whole scaffolded process, both on the side of the students and the side of the sponsors as well. Um, yeah, the whole project, it's meant to be beneficial for everybody. That's our ultimate goal. So the way that we move forward is um, we would schedule a meeting with me, the one-on-one with your founder organization representative, talk about this again, talk about project ideas, make sure we're clear with the parameters. I would send you the scoping form, which is a 2-paragraph document. You then return it to me, and then we put it into the database. When your project is selected, we always reach out to you to just make sure that
Yeah.
your needs are still relevant and see if there's anything you'd like to have changed. That's something I know you've participated in, Araceli, multiple times. You have the opportunity to tweak the project
Yes.
and make any changes. And sometimes we make changes on our side. So we'll also ask you if that's okay before we move forward. And you'd have a meeting with the faculty and then you'd be introduced to the students.
Yeah, that's really how it works. I mean, there are times where you can tweak it, but it's only to refine it. It's really just about refining it and then making sure that the deliverables, I mean, the students are just as invested as you are in having really good deliverables. I mean, these students, that's like you were saying, it's consulting, it is for them. Now they're getting real life experience on a project management endeavor. So I think it's a I don't know. I've been blessed ever since I met you, Lindsay,
I'm
on,
so
on LinkedIn.
happy.
And I'm so glad that the other women here in Midwest have, benefited. You might not know how direct you benefited, but there have been changes through the SWOT analysis. I know they talked a little bit about my branding and how to tweak it a little bit better for Midwest Mujeres so that we really are speaking to our target audience of women who have been either previously incarcerated, had a break in their career life. So we want to speak to them in a way. It's like acknowledging that you might feel alone here, but we are here. We're your
Right.
partners. And so I
Absolutely.
didn't even know that concept, if that makes sense. Like I knew it in my heart, but I didn't understand why. And now we know why, because that's the age group and this is what they kind of typically go through. Once you have that storyline for it really works. So I can't say anything more about it. Like this is why we wanted this interview so that the women from Midwest Mujeres could meet Lindsay. And if you have any more questions for her, feel free to ask. We'll put her email into the comments here. Um, or Lindsay, how could people like
I know. I was just thinking about that. What's the best way to share my
yeah,
email?
we'll put it in the description, obviously the website,
Sure.
and your email address so that people can connect with you directly and apply to see if
Absolutely.
see if this is a good fit for
Right.
you. Maybe that the online aspect to it is real, but the time commitment, to be honest, it doesn't feel like that hard. The professors
Good.
make it very easy for us. The professors make it very easy for us. They're like, hey, here's the time. They're really about like, let's shore up some of these deliverables, like that's where some of the tweaking happens. But yeah, I have nothing but beautiful things to say
I'm
think
so
about
happy
this
to hear it.
project. So
And I have to say, I also, this role was for me after a gap in employment. I had been home with my kiddos for like 7.5 years without a paying job. So I can completely relate to women who are trying to find themselves and decide which direction they want to head, and how to, how they want to handle themselves professionally. So I have a soft spot, for that shared background. So I look forward to meeting with whomever from your organization. And even if it's just to pop a question in the email, we don't have, even if you're not ready right now, I can even put you on my list to follow up with if you feel like you'd like to meet in 6 months. Um, just reach out for sure. I'd love to have some more connections.
thank you, Lindsay. Thank you all for listening to us. And that's a wrap. This is again Araceli from Midwest Mujeres. Gracias. Adios.